the thing is, we've all become educated better. I think it's now time to trust Americans to do the right thing. Even if they're going to do the wrong thing, at least you count on them to do the right thing, open the businesses up, and let's get on with life. Because what we're doing now with this total distrust, we don't, the governor's going to tell us all what we got to do, the president's going to tell us all what we got to do. That's got to come to an end. We open up our businesses, we get back to work, and we treat it with respect.
Good morning. Welcome back to Talking Racine. We're here today in full force. Mr. George Myers.
Morning.
Landlord to the stars.
Whatever you say.
Jim Spodek, our eminent producer. I'm Dr. Ken Yorgan, your host. And thank you for being here this morning. Unfortunately, we don't have a damn thing to talk about. We're just... Oh, well, this is kind of interesting. There was an election last week.
Yeah, there was.
Whoa.
Well, let's talk about that for a couple of minutes. I understand it's still going on. We aren't going to know what happened until today, even though the election was a week ago tomorrow. So, there was lawsuits flying back and forth, and charges and accusations and declarations, and man.
Finally got to the Supreme Court, and
the Supreme Court of the United States finally made a decision.
Boy, did it get up there fast,
yes,
too.
It did.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast
Friday, and by Monday, it had been through the Federal Appeals Court and on up to the Supreme Court.
It's crazy how that happens.
But I'd like to kind of just touch on a little bit of like how this went along and why it ended up the way it did. Because I think
it was a mess.
It was a mess, I agree. Total mess, and I think there was a lot of politics played into this. And the ones that suffered really is the voter. But maybe you could talk about it, George, a little bit. First it went to the appeals court in the state of Wisconsin. The Democratic National Committee filed a suit or an opinion they wanted from the appeals court in Wisconsin to postpone the election. That then the judge came back and said, well, yeah, okay, we're not going to postpone it. It's still going to be the 7th, but you'll have a week to get ballots,
get absentee ballots,
or mail-in ballots until the 13th. The Republicans then, or actually Evers came back. Republicans came back and said, we're going to take it to the higher courts. Evers came back the day before the election and announced that he was going to use an executive order to halt the election and then postpone it till sometime in June and discuss it with the legislature in the state of Wisconsin. The Republicans went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, nope, it's going to be held on the 7th, and you have to have your mail-in or absentee ballot postmarked by the 7th. Now, they came back and Evers was
postmarked by the 7th. There was another caveat to that. It also had to be to the city clerk by today.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So if it was postmarked, let's say sometime during the week, but it doesn't get to her for another 3 days because it's late or something like that, not counted.
Not counted. But prior to that, though, when the appeals court in the state of Wisconsin allowed it to be during this period of time between the 7th and the 13th, there could have been ballots
mailed during this past week.
And what would have been the problem?
The biggest problem with that is those people, well, first of all, that would be a good time to go out and find out who had voted and who had not voted. So go out and go to the people that you know are going to vote for you, because you've got all week to get them to get that darn ballot in.
Right.
See, so it gives them an unfair advantage to people that have access to the voting files, which of course is Corey Mason and the people in power.
Right. In Racine, it could be another group of people in another part of the state. But the fact is, they have this period of time here. Now they have what they call, I think the Republicans call it Aristotle. They dang near know exactly how you're going to vote. They know where you live. They know how many kids you got. I mean, they have great data. I think there's another one for
the Democrats have one too.
Right.
They're going to have the same type of list, absolutely.
So when that comes in, if I'm, let's say I'm a Democratic political machine like Corey Mason happens to be, I can see where these, now your name is on that absentee, okay, these come in. Just so happens we've compiled maybe a certain district in Racine is voted heavier in the absentee, and they know that that's more of a district that would probably be against whatever issue they happen to have. They go out during that period of time and solicit voters to
You can
make
search
sure you
for
get
voters. That's right.
Right.
Get those.
So they can kind of manipulate that during that week, which is not a good process, Democrat or Republican or anyone for that matter. So I think when the Supreme Court came in and said it has to be done by the 7th, was the right.
That was a very good decision.
It was a
because
good decision.
That took a lot of the corruption out of it, because
Right.
if left it that way, would have been a very serious infringement.
Well,
upon
it took the
right thing.
possibility for corruption out. I mean, you
Well, okay,
yeah.
okay, whatever. It depends on.
What? Let's just take a second here. What about Milwaukee? You have 180. Now let's again.
Well, another thing that we should mention is the fact that, and I haven't confirmed it, but I've been from a reliable source learned that there are certain post offices that do not put a postmark
Right.
on the mail. Some do, some don't. So if ballots came in and they were not postmarked, what do you do with those? When do they
and
come in?
that's still
I mean,
a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
even with the new setup.
So this whole mail-in, I mean, is it really the best way to go?
Well, it's a good way to go if it's properly managed. But this was a last-minute effort, and it was chaotic, and it became very, very uncertain, and that's the problem. And it's,
Doc, and
it's
you're
destroyed
talking
the
when you
confidence
say
of the voter.
when you say properly managed, you're talking about a theoretical, purely ethical system. When you go to the polls and vote, the integrity of your vote is very closely held, and it's virtually
Unless you vote on an electronic machine. Those have been proven to be hackable.
Very difficult to upset it. You'd have to get into the machinery, and you'd have to be able to. But with a paper ballot, so you got the recounts. If you don't like it, you got the recounts, and that paper ballot is there. But here's the point: when you go to the and you put your name down that you're going to vote, two things happen. Number one is you get a little ticket showing what number you are.
Right.
All right, and if you care to really count that, you go to watch the poll the last minute and find out what the last voter was and find their number, and so you know exactly how many people voted. Number two, you get a ballot. You take that ballot, you go to the booth and you mark it, then you take that ballot, no one touches it, you put it into the machine yourself, no one touches it. All right, so that integrity is held. When you go to a write-in now, you're suddenly starting to put other steps in there. In other words, you fill out the ballot, you fold it up and mail it, but somebody else now handles it when they take it out of the container, and now you have to watch it, because now the chance for corruption gets involved, because somebody could look at that ballot and say,
Well, you want to
I don't-
make sure that the ballot was not opened prior to being counted.
I'm talking about. Well, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. The
And
point
that's
is
why you want to observe the count.
and that's why you want to observe the opening of the ballot too. You want to make sure
they
that
should take place at the same time.
right. Yeah,
And there should be enough. There's poll watchers. There's people there that you have not just one person opening it. But the fact is, this is the area where you do
That's
have
where the
this,
corruption can get
Right.
involved with.
Right.
And that's why today we need to get over there and look at those ballots. We need to check the postmarks on it. We're talking
If
mail-in
there are
ballots.
any, yeah.
We have to check the postmarks on it, and then we have to make sure they are not opened. If they've been opened, then that has to be challenged, because if they've been opened, then how many others have been opened that aren't being counted?
Right.
See, so those are the questions that come up. That's the additional chances for corruption that are already there. When it comes to ballot machinery, fooling with their the way they work, that's in both ways, whether it's straight ballot or whether it's write-in ballot, the same problem is there. But when it comes to the difference between the two, that integrity of handling the ballot is open for some disruption and corruption because of the write-in ballot. And that's my biggest problem with it. You have to trust the system at that point beyond what you can observe sometimes. I mean, I can observe everything I do with my ballot that goes in there. And I've seen we've all participated in the recounts.
Yeah.
They take all that big stack of ballots out, it's the same number that they counted, and they can go through each one of them and make sure that it agrees with what the machine printed up. And if somebody fooled around with the formula in the machine, you'll know it right away, because it'll read
Well,
one number
when there's
here
a
and
paper
another-
ballot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the people that just vote with no paper ballot?
Yeah, that's a dangerous situation in my
that to me
estimation.
is, Wisconsin has, I think, I really like our system. You can scan it. You can search through it for fraudulent activities if you want to. And
what they were doing when we were down observing a recount is actually they would have two people count them by hand and compare them to the way the machine counted them.
That's right. And we could look over their shoulder and make sure they were putting in the right piles.
Yeah,
there was a lot of observation.
Yeah.
It was all there, was the point. I think the whole country, I think every state should adopt what we've got in the way that they do the balloting. This just by machinery to me is
okay. Well, let's just take a look at what happened this time.
Let's get back
now
to our
you've got.
topic here.
I think what you did is politics entered into this election big time. Why did the Democrats, including Corey Mason, on this appeals court? I mean, actually had the city attorney put in a brief to the appeals court, asking to have this delayed, this election delayed because of the pandemic. My thoughts are, and this is strictly my opinion, they felt the numbers were not coming in the way they thought that would benefit that particular party. Why wasn't the Republicans filing something saying we want to move this? Because I think the Democrats thought we're not getting the voter turnout that we hoped to on
their polling data indicated they weren't doing
polling data
so well.
wasn't coming in right. So they were pushing this thing. Now, of course, it went through this whole procedure where we finally asked for a executive order, which was overturned. But let's just take a second here, and I want to jump into Milwaukee for just a minute. They had Racine had 14 polling places open, which was, I think, the number that there's always open, or 16 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I don't think there was any.
No, and it wasn't a wait. I think it went fairly well. But in Milwaukee, they had 180.
They have 180.
Typically, they have 180.
And had five.
Had five open. It was.
What was that all about? I don't get that.
Yeah, and that's where
that makes no sense to me.
Just,
Why would you want to do that?
All right, here's my read on it anyway. I mean, this is just from knowing a little bit about Milwaukee.
The point with all this coronavirus going around,
why are we
make it
jamming
worse.
people all together? Now they're saying
more congestion.
One of the things is that the National Guard, we got to them a little too late. We couldn't. Are you kidding me?
Well, we had some Guard members here in Racine
Right.
that were working on the polls.
Most of the poll workers where I voted were Guard.
I mean,
Majority.
you knew there was an election on April 7th. I mean, that was cast in stone. If you're going to have it, or you weren't going to have it. At that point, you address the April 7th election, and you make allowances. If it doesn't happen, well, then it just doesn't happen that day. But it's like a wedding. You're going to have an outdoor wedding. Well, you make allowances to have it say indoor in case it rains.
Right.
I mean, it's just common sense. Well, Milwaukee doesn't do that. Here's my read. Milwaukee wanted to suppress that voting because I'm going to tell you, Barrett, who is a heavy involvement with the Democratic Party in Milwaukee, there's Lena Taylor, who is a black woman who's fairly popular. I think they felt as though if Lena Taylor could take out Barrett in that primary election for the Democratic
So you think
position.
it was political?
I think it was politically motivated.
Well, at least there's a reason there, Jim. I think it's very good of him. But yeah, at least I could not figure that
that's
out.
just
Why
my
would
personal
you do
opinion.
it?
Why would you do this? I can't think of no other reason.
Put it on 5 polling places.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it was against.
Anyway,
all,
that's how stupid some of
all
this stuff is
reasons.
getting. Yeah, and
Right.
it's all,
Well, it's all this political. This politics has entered into our
and
election.
then it all around this coronavirus thing
Yeah.
too, which I'm just getting tired of it getting so stupid. But at any rate, go ahead.
Well, I think there was ample lead time. A lot of people who, for whatever reason, did not want to go to the polls had an opportunity to get an absentee ballot. But I'll tell you what, I voted absentee. And it was not an easy process because you had to have a picture of your ID that you downloaded onto the application, which would be difficult for a lot of people. I had a hard time with it. I mean, it was not an easy process to go through. I ended up having to use the email alternative rather than the online application.
I'm actually glad to hear this, Doc.
What, that I had a hard time?
No, not that you had that it's hard to do because I don't think it. When I would, I've
Well,
been
I
voting
think
for a long
before there
time.
was voter IDs, it was relatively simple.
Well, 50 years ago, when I tried to vote absentee, I had to go in and sign a piece of paper and explain why I was voting absentee.
right.
Yeah.
I didn't get to do it just because I wanted to. It was because I had a business trip or whatever it was. I forgot. I went in with my dad, and we had to sign it, and then I had to vote. Then I voted. Then I didn't get
Yeah.
to vote. By mail or
get the
something like
ballot
that.
at home, yeah,
I
exactly.
would
You
vote
did it
right
right there.
then with the reason I was. Now, well, I don't feel like going to the poll. It's too hard for me to get out there. And sometimes,
I mean, you think
so
at
you
some
vote
point-
absentee. I mean, what?
I mean, do you
is
think
that-
at some
Huh?
point we're going to have electronic voting from home? You think that's going
Boy,
to
if it comes to that, I think that's sick.
Yeah.
I don't like the loss of integrity just in the extra step that you take. I will explain with the ballot,
Yeah.
as opposed to you putting it in the machine, as opposed to sending anybody else who puts it in the machine. Let alone if we start doing it all by registering by mail and voting by mail and
Yeah.
never
A
see
lot
the
of room for-
person.
yeah.
never
Well, there
shows
are some
up.
states that do that.
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea at all. No,
you want the integrity of your voting.
Let's keep it primitive. Let's just keep it. You go to the poll, you vote on this day, and everybody votes, and then you count the ballot. And
Do you
whoever
think
has
there
the
were a
most
lot of
wins the
people that
election.
were kept from the polls because of this? You think a lot of people said, "Hey, you know what? I didn't do absentee."
I do.
I don't necessarily feel that way. I mean, on election day, how many times has it rained and people say, I ain't going. It's raining today. It happens a lot.
Yeah, that's what
You
I'm
know?
saying. And I think the coronavirus just made it worse.
You think people just?
People were afraid to go to the polls for whatever
Well,
reason.
we'll
I think
see
it made
what
it
the
worse.
numbers are.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I saw some of the numbers at the local polling places, and
Well-
they weren't that far off from.
Well, now,
And there were a lot of prior voters
Yeah.
through absentee.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's not going to be any way to judge it. I can go back to, I think it was the Trump year, 2016, and the number of people that voted on Racine.
Trump year.
Yeah, the Trump,
The year
the
of
Trump
Trump.
election,
Yeah,
as opposed
yeah.
to the Obama presidency. Obama presidency was like 7,000 in the city. The Trump in that year, it was like 15,000, jumped way up. And then, so it goes up and down
Right.
depending on the election. And it certainly goes up when we have a spring election in Racine that is also a primary presidential election. So every 4 years, it jumps up.
Right.
And so this would be a little bit higher just because of that, as opposed to 2 years from now or a year from now when there's no presidential primary and it's only aldermanic, that it drops way down.
Well, we should get the numbers later on today.
We'll get the
So,
numbers
yeah.
later on, but the main thing I think we got to do is we got to get down there early enough so we can demand to see all the absentee ballots are going to be counted, check their postmarks out, and check to make sure they haven't been opened.
You know what I would like to see? More qualified candidates.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we have 4 very qualified candidates running. We know about that.
Yeah.
I'd like
But,
to
I mean,
see-
there was
I would wish there was
but there
another
were 7
3.
races. So
Oh,
Yeah,
geez,
yeah.
It's
I would like 3
it's all,
more,
It's
yeah.
getting so political, and that's part of the problem. I mean, Republican, Democrat.
Yeah.
It's gotten so bad now. We're not talking about
we're very divided, and there's a lot of
it
antagonism
doesn't
back
work.
and forth.
Well, all the corruption going on in the city hall doesn't help either. We're fomenting some of that when we expose these things like Machinery Road, Jim.
I know.
So people start to say, "Hey, it means something over there. What goes on?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
here's
thus the battles begin.
One of the things I wanted to talk about too was this executive emergency extension of the powers by Corey Mason.
Yeah,
Now
to
till-
Memorial Day.
Till Memorial
Yeah.
Day. Okay.
That's another month and a half.
Yeah,
a little
month
more
and a
than a
half.
month and a half.
Now, I mean, what's your thoughts?
Utterly ridiculous. Folks, I finally when I saw some of the way that these statistics were being manipulated. In other words, when a person dies, if they have a coronavirus element in their body, then it's determined that is why they died.
Yeah, if they test positive, that's all.
If there's anything if there's anything in there, just a slight,
Corona-related,
anything
though, right.
corona-related in that system, that the person could. And if you look at the pneumonia, look it up. Jim, you might put this up on the screen. I'd appreciate it if you would do this. If you're going to keep this segment in there and what I'm saying in there. When I saw that pneumonia graph, and
now I got to do it.
yeah. Well, you can cut all this out too. You look at that bottom chart where it just drops off the bottom, off the edge of the table. The number of people dying for pneumonia goes like nobody's dying for pneumonia anymore. Why? Because when they're dying for pneumonia, some of them most of them, or a lot of them, had a coronavirus thing in there. So now it's determined to be the coronavirus. When I saw that, I said, "Wait a second here. What are we?" And this other doctor that talked about a woman getting killed by an automobile accident. She went to the hospital, her lung collapsed. She obviously died from the automobile accident. But, oh, wait a second, there's a coronavirus in her system. Guess what? She's a coronavirus statistic. So it's like...
Are we getting to the point now
right,
where
right.
people are getting kind of
It's enough
are
of
they
it.
getting fed up?
I hope so.
Well, I'll tell you
hope
what,
so.
where it's a problem, it's a serious problem.
Right.
So I think taking precautionary measures is definitely warranted. Wash
I
your
agree with
hands,
that. New York City,
you know,
do it.
and you know, be very, very careful when you're interacting with somebody that's a member of the susceptible population. Elderly
Yeah,
people,
that,
people
yeah.
that have known disease and stuff like that. Just exercise caution. But all of these shutdowns that are going on,
that is where the
it's
violation of
difficult
rights
to take.
goes.
It
Yeah,
really
yeah.
is difficult to take. It's having a tremendous impact on our social structure. And now they've got all these bailout programs going on. Trillions of dollars
Going on.
being pumped into the economy. There's a lot of money changing hands. Where the heck is it all going to end up?
No.
Yeah, there's something.
You talk
more
about
here.
piling on problem,
Oh,
making
man.
the problem worse.
Well, some of the senators, and they were GOP senators, were contacted Evers and said, "Why are we some of these counties up north that have been devastated by it also have closed the business? Why are we closing the businesses up there? Maybe we should start to open some of this up."
There's counties up there that have no statistics
Right.
at all. Nobody's
And you're
got
talking about
contact by
tourism,
virus.
and you're
Nobody's
talking
died from it.
I get it, and
Nobody's survived.
I got a feeling there's a backlash coming now. People are they're out of work. There's 20 million people out of work. I think there's a backlash coming. Racine has struggled for years as it is. Now to close these businesses, it's really, I think there's some businesses that aren't going to open in Racine.
Well, it's time to open those that they
Some
can.
down.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing that I see. We've gotten a lot more education. Almost, even I wash my hands more often now.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
And the thing is.
You finally bought a bar of soap?
In fact, I got one in every room now.
Oh,
The thing is that we've become more educated. Just what we're talking
Right.
about now with the social distancing, and if there's somebody that's sick, maybe leave them alone, keep them in the house for a little while. But the thing is, we've all become educated better. I think it's now time to trust Americans to do the right thing. Even if they're going to do the wrong thing, at least you count on them to do the right thing, open the businesses up, and let's get on with life. Because what we're doing now with this total distrust, we don't, the governor's going to tell us all what we got to do, the president's going to tell us all what we got to do. That's got to come to an end. We open up our businesses, we get back to work, and we treat it with respect. This whole sickness thing. Don't be afraid of it. Just go ahead and let's get on with life.
well, and I think there's an awful lot of paranoia going around because we're in a very
for sure.
litigious society,
And that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, God forbid I get somebody else sick. I mean, first, I don't want to bear the burden of having
I can
infected
understand
somebody
that.
else.
That's right.
And secondly, there's a concern I might get sued.
Well, that's the person's going to have to
Yeah.
take into
Yeah,
consideration
well-
too when they open their establishment back up. That's right.
And I
It's
think
going to
that's
be
part of it.
their risk that they take.
But
just
I
like
mean, it
we
all
do.
feeds into this paranoia and this concern and anxiety. I mean, I run into people all the time that are just like nuttily
Oh, yeah, they
anxious
are.
about this.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Well, you
Doc,
talked
back
about
to
how
the
you
lawsuit.
watched the news and all of a sudden you'd realize you got indigestion.
I would do it. Yeah. I'd
starting to
get
get
sick
sick
and I'd
watching
think,
this
oh my
news."
God, am I getting something?
Am I
'cause I
getting
got
the
the flu?
virus? Yeah.
And then I think, oh wait a second, turn off the news. I get well. No. The thing is, back to this lawsuit thing. I don't want the governor coming in and telling me I can't start up my business because I might get sued.
Yeah.
That's my decision to make.
Mhm.
All right, I'll be careful. And now everybody knows, and so now you that's a good point. Maybe you can get sued because you brought this person in, let them come in when you had somebody to blah blah, whatever it was. Okay, tough luck.
Oh, I have
Be
no
more careful.
doubt, and I think that's part of the fear that's
Yeah.
going on.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
fine.
you don't want to bear that responsibility, and you could
Well,
be
then
liable.
that type of person should
Yeah.
just keep their business closed then. But the thing is that for them, the governor, to do like he's doing now, across the whole darn state,
Yeah.
where some people think, there's nobody around.
and some of the
Why can't they go outdoors?
closures don't make sense.
No.
I mean, it's like restaurants, for example. Now they're carry out, but a gas station restaurant can be open. What the?
I know.
I mean, there's the consistency just isn't there.
Well, the one picture I liked was they had two pictures side by side. One was Walmart, where there's all these people going together going to Walmart. That was legal. But over here at the golf course, the station is way wide. They're all closed. I mean, huh? It's time to open up again. We've learned. We've been educated
to loosen the restrictions. Yes.
Well,
I mean to make it wide open.
I would.
What are you going to do if there's another? They go through these viruses. They'll hit a peak, they'll drop, they'll come back, they'll hit a drop. Look at the Hong Kong flu. That was back in the 60s. I mean, and there were a lot more people got sick and a lot more people died from the Hong Kong flu. And you know where they came from? Vietnam, guys in Vietnam coming back to the States, and they brought the Hong Kong flu with them. And we went through it. We all lived through it, and actually the antibodies helped us in other avenues. If you can do a little history on this stuff, we're biological creatures, and we are born, we live, and we die.
That is very good, Jim. Our bodies are biological anyway. We as beings, as a personality, we need to get out and live. Even at the expense of losing a body.
Right. I mean,
take care of your immune system.
Right.
Take your vitamins. Don't eat junk food.
Right.
Right. Well, the last thing we have to discuss this morning is our good old friend Foxconn. Foxconn managed to hit some of the marks, or they came close. They came
what
close
would a
to a
talking
mark.
machine show be without Foxconn?
Well, it'd be Machinery Row. It seems like we just can't escape the clutches of those two items. But nearly 70% of Foxconn's Wisconsin employees started in the fourth quarter of 2019.
It's a miracle.
They managed to get 500 employees. They needed 550 in order to qualify for any tax credits. So they got 580 in, but some of those didn't count. 20 of those didn't count because they were over the $100,000 an annual threshold. Mm-hmm. So they couldn't get tax credits on those, which brought them down to 560, and they needed 550. Oh, they just got in
just snuck over the wire.
Just got in there.
Anyway, 2.8 million or something like that? Or
and where did some of these employees come from? Some of them are from Illinois. Some of them were just transfers within Foxconn. I mean, I think they pulled out all stops to do whatever they could to qualify for these tax credits.
They know how to play the American political game.
I mean, you can just see the setup here. I mean, it's like, we need that money. Make the numbers right for December so we can, get our check in January.
Yeah. Well, I did the math on the jobs that they've got going out there, and if my math is right, and it probably is because it's just numbers, those jobs were worth on average about $84,000 to $85,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So they're nice paying jobs, the ones that they have over there.
That's good.
Well, we'll see if they last.
And where they transferred in and where they making that, I mean, it's hard to, it was only 3,000 corona deaths in China, so Foxconn, Taiwan, job numbers. I don't know if I held a lot of water.
At least they're open,
Yeah, right, I guess so.
Well, and there's a question as to whether or not these were all employees in Racine County, too. Yeah. So
I mean, and do you think they're not going to give them that bump? They're going to give it to them. The state's going to give it to them. They almost, that would admit the fact that Foxconn's a joke. They're not going to do that.
We're swimming in money here.
Yeah.
Give them the tax
what's the difference?
Yeah.
We got trillions coming.
Yeah.
Oh,
$4 trillion coming. What's a couple million?
Oh, that's a whole other.
Well, that's
story.
the thing. Yeah, there's like $2 trillion packages now. Yeah. And we're just getting started.
Wait, I tell you, we're going to see $6-8 trillion out of the federal government before this is over. I don't think they even have a handle on how much money has been lost in this shutdown in this country.
I hope you're wrong on that one, Jim.
But I don't.
That is utterly ridiculous. $6 trillion.
It is. It's crazy.
It's six.
Crazy
I'll bet
numbers.
you it'll be more than that. I don't think they have any idea what the devastation that has been caused in the economy.
I'm going to count on them opening it up.
It's time to open it up. I agree.
For the people to rule. It's not because necessarily the governors or the president want to do it, but the people want to get back to work.
Yeah.
And hopefully they're going to rule, and then they don't have to worry about that last $2 or $4 trillion.
Well, if they get more testing going on, that would be helpful.
Testing was the key.
That would make a big
That's
difference.
the South Korean model. South Korea was the first to get hit with this out of China, and they handled it, never
Yeah.
closed anything down. But their number one step was testing.
social distancing.
Social distancing.
Yeah.
And the other one was step number 2,
honesty.
honest and open, transparent of information. And we aren't getting that either. We're getting not nearly enough testing and lots of lies. Yeah.
We're done now. We've exhausted our things here today to talk about, and we got something in the hopper for next week.
Yep, should be a good one.
It ought to be a good one. So come back and see us next week, and if we follow through on this, it's going to definitely be worth watching. Thanks for being here. Be well. Take care. We'll see you next week.